Greetings, everyone, and welcome back from lunch. Can you hear me okay? All right. Well, I wonder whether your lunch potentized you. That's the topic of this talk. But before I go into the topics of the talk, I would like to celebrate Tiffany Vanderstoker for her fabulous putting on of this conference. A lot of us think it just kind of magically happens, and I can tell you that's not the case. So thank you, Tiffany. And of course, it's a great honor to be here. I really feel as if I am among respected and honorable colleagues. So I'm delighted to have the chance to share what interests me. So we're talking about crushed, whole, organic, non-GMO seeds. And I'm going to encourage you to incorporate those in your diet. And I hope at the end of this talk, you'll see there's a lot of good reasons for that. So how to keep your attention after lunch. And if you feel like taking a nap, I will come down off the podium and shake you to awaken you. So be warned. But after what Dr. Michael Platt said this morning, we're all tempted to take a nap unless we have adequate anti-adrenaline forces such as progesterone. Now, here's how I'm going to keep you awake. I'm going to give you the dessert first. This is my father at age 62, white-haired, hardworking, healthy, active man. After eating crushed, whole, organic, raw, non-GMO seeds, his hair is coming in black. Now, I would just suggest that I've been practicing for almost 25 years, 26 years or so. I've never seen anything that turns hair back to its original color. And I'm going to explain in the course of the next hour of this talk why seeds have that potential. A seed is something we see every day, we throw away, we spit out. Here comes a Halloween, and it's like a tragedy for me, all the pumpkin seeds that get thrown away when people carve up the pumpkin. And I'm going to explain to you that the seed is a vortex, a collector of energy. It is a unique aspect of the living organism in that it collects and it concentrates energy. It concentrates light energy. It's the same thing with the female uterus. That's an extraordinarily designed organ. It breaks all the rules in the body. Blood doesn't clot there. Nerves grow there. It's a unique mechanism to concentrate vortexes of energy to facilitate an extraordinary process called regeneration. So this is just kind of, after 9 months, my father has his hair coming in black. And when I first saw him, I thought that he might have gotten some boot black in his hair. It was kind of like, what's happening? And so we'll go through that. So hopefully you know that during this lecture, you're going to learn the secrets of how to regenerate yourself. Because remember, the hair is just one of the fastest growing tissues in the body. What's happening in this man's body at 92 if his hair is coming in black? Imagine the regeneration which is happening through the whole body. So if you can stay awake after lunch, I think we'll have some interesting discussions here. Now, the goals for today are to encourage you to eat the seeds, as we mentioned, and to demonstrate the superiority of crushed whole seeds compared to what all of your patients are taking, which are extracted seed oils. And it stands to reason when you're eating an extracted seed oil, it's gone through an extraordinary distillation process. It's already becoming rancid, and it becomes, in Andy Weil's words, dangerous. We'll go through that. So, in Shakespeare, it says, sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, and lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. Extracted seed oils is a near miss, and it can be toxic. Ideally, you're eating the whole crushed seed itself. In addition, we're going to talk about inflammation because the seeds are some of the most safe and effective anti-inflammatory agents. And we'll talk about sensible options for eating these seeds. And we're going to talk about how to potentize your diet with enhanced cellular transport and deposition of waste. So, of course, eating isn't just a function of eating the right food. You have to digest it well, you have to absorb it, and you have to excrete what's not necessary. That's a lot of goals for this talk. So the real question is, after this talk, the question is, shall I eat the seed? And the answer is yes. As long as you take that home tonight after as a take-home message, and you resist the temptation to eat seedless grapes or seedless watermelon, and you think twice before you throw away the core of the apple with the seed, knowing that the seed has 20-fold more nutrients in it than the rest of the fruit. So if we were on a desert island and a watermelon washed up, don't let me give you that pink, sweet fruit in exchange for me being able to keep the seeds, because I'm going to get much more nutrition from the seeds than from the fruit, 20-fold more. I like this. Of course, people will say, well, isn't there cyanic acid or cyanide in seeds? And the answer is yes, in some. So you have to be careful what seeds you eat. And of course, here's the Latin, sola dosis facit venum. This is for my friend Richard Gerber, who's a student of Latin. It means the dose makes the poison. This is what Hippocrates taught us as well. And then this is my current favorite Latin quote. Anybody can translate that? Lead, follow, or get out of the way. All right, and that's what we all do here. We lead. So Paracelsus in the 1400s, life comes from life. You have to eat living food if you want to get life. And the update on that, oh, by the way, I wanted to digress, because if you don't know Paracelsus, in your notes is his oath. I'm not going to take the time to read it now, but it's a beautiful and a superior oath to the Hippocratic oath, which a lot of us had taken. So, and then because Paracelsus had a very interesting, this is still a digression from seeds. We know that we've lost a lot of our colleagues recently. And this is in honor of those colleagues such as Nick Gonzalez and others. And it says the Physicians Guild in Strasbourg, Austria, wrote Paracelsus encouraging him to stop seeing sick patients because he was not a dues-paying member of their guild. And they warned him several times, and he ignored them. If you know the history of Paracelsus, it's inspirational. And then he died at age 48. And in the 17th century, the Swiss decided that this was a pretty important human being, so they exhumed him, and they brought his body to a grave site with a tomb befitting his stature. And they learned in exhuming him that, the back of his skull was crushed in a fatal manner. And a search of the Austrian Physicians Guild minutes and ledger reveals a large payment to parties unnamed, the only such entry, just before Paracelsus died. If you have any conspiratorial bone in your body, you could say that one is left to guess and whatever happened to end Paracelsus's life in such a tragic way. But in light of our current colleagues, I wanted just to call attention to that. So Paracelsus says life comes from light. Well, life comes from life. Another way to say that is you have to eat living foods if you want to be alive. And I would want you to consider that life comes from light. Now, I might be telling tales out of school here, but Michael Gerber taught me about looking into the candle. Has anyone talked with Michael about his candle gazing? Well, there are people that actually can look at the sun and be nourished just from looking at the sun. Because actually, when you eat a good organic vegetable, I would suggest the vegetable is just the vehicle to deliver unadulterated light to you. Because you and I, we are all light beings. And that's really what we thrive on. And so life comes from life comes from light, and all energy comes from the sun, and it starts with the proton. So we have to pay attention to eating light. And I'm comfortable talking with homeopathic colleagues because that's not a difficult concept for us. So let's behold the six-sided antenna that we have around us for receiving light. Think about six, right? We know that 4 alchemically in ancient wisdom is the sign of the earth. 5 is the sign of man. We know Leonardo's 5-pointed star, the man. And now we have 6 has always been a sign of the cosmos. Again, I'm delighted to have this conversation with you because this wouldn't happen in the Washington State Medical Association. So bear with me. So here we are. What are the 6-sided antennae which we can use to receive light? Well, I'm a beekeeper. So the first one, of course, is the hexagons we see in the beehive. And this is an extraordinary insect, which is, of course, under assault right now by Monsanto and Bayer. But it's a fabulous example of the light antennae. But here's the quartz crystal compared to amorphous glass. And you can see the six-sided antennae, really, which allow the quartz to be a transparent, light-transmitting crystal. And let's look at carbon, which is one of the main topics today. What is it? It's six-sided, the carbon molecule. And the double bond, I was taught early on by Otto Wolff, who was our professor of anthroposophical medicine, that wherever you see a double bond, you see light incarnate. And if you want to talk about where light gets its first foothold in the material, inanimate world, it's the double bond. Now, this is esoteric conversations, so let me try to give it some practical applications. Here is a beautiful MRI of a seed. And you see what I like to appreciate is not the husk necessarily, but really antennae. And we'll come back to the antennae on seeds when we look closely at the sunflower seed. But what we have is the seed, I've told you, has 20-fold more nutrients than the rest of the fruit, but the husk has more nutrients than the seed. And that's why you don't want to settle for extracted seed oils. You want to eat the whole, organic, non-radiated, non-GMO, raw seed, including the husk. And why don't we eat seeds? Because they're bitter and they're encased in a husk. If you think you're chewing up your chia seeds in the morning and getting any benefit, you're kidding yourself. The husk is very hard for the teeth to really destroy, so you can get at the nutrients in the husk. Really, I would suggest to you that nature doesn't want us to eat the seed. Nature wants us to eat the fruit, take a walk, and deposit the seed in a nice fertilized clump somewhere to let the plant propagate. And so when you're eating the seed, I would suggest you're really eating in the VIP lounge of nature. You're eating the most nutrient-dense, valuable part of the plant. It's hard to get it because of the husk. Now, here's an interesting concept which agronomists and plant scientists will understand. But the seed, of course, it exists in the ground. It's put into the ground in some way, and yet it's able to generate enough of a stalk to start to feed itself from the sun, from light, and continue its growth into a plant. I'm going to suggest that the stored light energy sustains the seed underground until it can germinate, that the seed is actually a packet of light. Back when I showed you the venom or the bees, I mean, I'm an apitherapist. I didn't mention this, but I've always considered the bee venom to be distilled light. So the apitherapist who gives you venom is delivering light forces. There's also a lot of extraordinary biochemistry in the venom. There's apamin, which is a fabulous, very specific blocker of calcium-dependent potassium channels. It's the reason why venom is so successful for folks with multiple sclerosis. There's also a substance called, I think it's called, well, I forget the name of it, but it's more powerful than steroids, than cortisol. So we have inflammatory and anti-inflammatory processes in the venom, but for the purposes of this talk, I'm encouraging you to think about the venom as distilled light. Now, so what is a seed? It's the most nutrient-dense food on earth. It's nature's treasure chest, really. Every embryo has genetic spare parts. So when you're eating the seed, you're getting a genetic spare parts supplement. So you're not just getting anti-inflammatory seed oil, but you're getting spare parts to repair your own DNA and RNA. A seed is packed with that. It's protected by this potent husk, which is very rich in beta-1,3 glucan and bioflavonoids, terpenes, a lot of minerals, a lot of, I mean, the husk is really the guardian angel of the seed. It's an extraordinary defense mechanism. So the best thing to do is to eat that and to have that in your seed oil, because it will emanate or radiate its protective forces, preventing the oil to go rancid. You also have this seed husk. I want you to think of it as a lamination. You know, the great woodworkers will sand down the tabletop and then put a lacquer down and then sand it and a lacquer down and sand it and a lacquer down 20 times. That's exactly how the plant laminates the seed prior to becoming ripe. It's a I don't know if it's an infinite amount of laminations, but they're all full of polymannose, a glycoprotein, an immune-enhancing glycoprotein. Don't settle for the extracted seed oil. It's a condensation and a lamination, and it's where the immune-potentiating glycoproteins and sterols are. This is just another metaphor that if you had a choice to eat the fruit or the seeds are much more nutrient-dense. Again, the mucilage and the testa, which is the outside, are the most nutrient-dense part of the seed. I think it's a beautiful image. And so if we're going to ask what's so special about the seeds, it's really, Emerson says, the creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn. That's just a mind-blowing fact. What do we have our hands on when we have a seed? Think of that potential. The Germans call it Keimekraft, or sprouting forces. And here's a volume 21, the Pacific Coast Journal of Homeopathy. Dr. Borke, of course, was the editor in those days. And I'm going to tell you about the seed and what he talked about with the seed, since we're homeopaths here. And this is really worth reading. He says, but let us first get a definite idea of the nature of life itself. I mean, why not? Just why not? If we're doctors, let's get an idea of the nature of life. Okay, as manifested through organic forms, the idea of life in its simplest expectation is that of activity, and therefore obviously involving that of change. But if only change be essential to life, it may be asked, what is the condition of the seed, which remains unaltered during a period of many centuries and then is capable of awakening at last when placed in favorable circumstances, as if it only ripened the year before. Such a seed cannot be said to be alive according to our present definition of life, for it's not performing vital operations. For it is not during this long period undergoing any disintegration. It's still capable of being aroused into the activity that we call life by the application of the proper external stimuli. The chemical elements of the seed and the external stimuli are brought into contact with favorable environment, and the seed takes on life. So I love the fact that Borke was paying attention to the seed in terms of life. And here's a fun example. You have to understand, I'm trying to have you appreciate the power in the husk of the seed, because that's what allows the seed to remain for 2,000 years dormant. This was found at the Fortress Masada, and it's a date palm, an extinct species of plant, which was found and planted in 2005 and germinated after almost 2,000 years. Okay, well that's pretty impressive, right? Is that impressive, 2,000 years? Well, how about 32,000 years? Here's a plant found in Siberia. It was found underneath 124 feet of permafrost. It's an extinct species of plant, and it germinated. 32,000 years. Now let's look at the role of seeds in homeopathy and energetic medicine. We know our seeds. The sycamore seed, Acer pseudoplantus, the pumpkin seed, curbita, coffee seed, coffea. We know these seeds. And I would suggest that if we're really interested in developing remedies, we would develop remedies from all seeds. I would suggest that if you come to me with a wonderful fruit juice from Tasmania that has wonderful antioxidant properties or something, I'd say, great. I grant you that's a wonderful juice. Can I have some of the seeds of that plant and make some remedies? We know from the mustard seed we have thiocinamin, and this is, I think it's basically a well-known solvent for dissolving scars. And of course, our favorite Nux vomica, it's from the seeds, right? It's from the seeds of the tree. Here's a picture of those extraordinary seeds. Now, anybody recognize this sculpture? Every time I go to Washington, D.C., I get so depressed. Our friend Jonathan Wright calls it Washington, DNC, where they do that operation on the taxpayers. This is the only statue in Washington, D.C. of a medical doctor, and it's Samuel Hahnemann. And if you ever get to D.C., this is a beautiful statue. It's what I call the site of redemption. So now we're going to go to Rudolf Steiner, and we're going to talk about seeds. And he says, and this is in translation, this is English, he was writing in German. When the seed, having been raised to the highest complexity, you think about potentization, right? I mean, the take-home message here is the seed is the potentized essence of the plant. But Rudolf Steiner says the seed being raised to the highest complexity has fallen asunder into cosmic dust and the tiny realm of chaos. Now, the literal word for chaos, the Greek, means lacking form, full of potential. That's chaos in Greek. And that's what a potentization is. So here's Rudolf Steiner, 1914, 1918, talking about the seed being the highest complexity. Not a high complexity, the highest complexity in life. Whether it's the sperm, the egg, whether it's whatever. And it falls into the tiny realm of chaos, lacking form, full of potential. And then the entire surrounding universe begins to work and stamps itself upon the seed. Not just our solar system, the entire universe is paying attention to seeds. And I'm going to make the point that the seed, and seed scientists understand this, is actually a vortex and collects energy from the entire universe to potentize it so it can do what it needs to do. Thus building up out of the tiny chaos that which can only be built up by forces pouring in from the great universe, so in the seed we get an image of the universe. In every seed formation, the earthly process of organization is carried to its very end, to the point of chaos. Time and again, in the chaos of the seed, the new organism is built up again out of the whole universe. Here in this seed, we have the stamp or impress of the entire cosmos. This is esoteric. I wish I could tell you that I totally understand this, and I don't. But I do think I'm eating more seeds because of this, which is the only message I really want to get to you folks is don't settle for the seedless grapes. Now, this is just, it gets better and better. The seed is an imploding, not exploding, imploding. You have energy imploding in with the seed because of the structure of the seed. The seed is an imploding, multi-step, power-generating vortex. And it's similar to the human heart and the uterus, and really all organs are created in this vortex manner. Now, this is in orange, but if you haven't heard about the fact that the heart is really a tube which has been folded over upon itself, this is a brilliant Italian scientist. This is worth looking at these YouTubes. And he actually pulls the heart apart and shows you that it comes from one single muscular tube. And a vortex, to talk about the seeds, the vortex follows the path of least resistance. That's what a vortex does. So what it creates is the zenith of vitality. The result of a vortex is the most energy-potent, light-filled, vitalized substance. All seed membranes are laminates. I told you about the woodworker who sands it and varnishes and sands it. All of the seed membranes are laminates, which create a vortex through a sieve-like effect. And what's interesting is the external laminate has pores which are larger than the next one inside, which are larger than the next one inside. So the smallest pores in this membrane laminate are closest to the seed. That's some of the structural genius of the seed, which lets it be a vortex. Seed membranes are laminates which create a vortex through a sieve effect via consecutively smaller pores. The seed is the benefactor of that vortex of light or life energy, which is really biological potentization. So we're looking at, as homeopaths, we're looking at in the plant a potentization process. Here we have our sunflower seed, which, we could just stop the lecture right now and just gaze at this, I think. But if you look at the sunflower seed, we know that seeds grow in the site of wave compression. Wave compression is something physicists understand to be a potentization of wave energy. And seeds grow in that wave compression, which creates the highest frequency of the plant. Now, if one considers the organic potentiation or potentization of the seed, the Fibonacci sequence allows the plants to create a wave compression sequence. That's what the Fibonacci system is. It's really like the opposite of a speaker which disseminates sound. It brings in energy, and it compresses the energy. And sunflower seeds arise within a Fibonacci sequence, and their tiny trumpet antennae at each head impart the highest frequency to the seed. We talked about the antennae being the six-sided things in the bee venom and such. But I'm going to show you a picture here about how the plant not only arranges its seeds in a Fibonacci sequence, but its tiny antenna actually allow for the concentration into the seed. So the seed and the seed oils are the highest frequency. Think double bonds with the light force of the plant. Ormus is something we can go into, but basically we can talk about the seed process as a superconductor. For physicists, that's something where they can receive energy with no loss of energy in the process of transmitting it. That's a concentration of the seed. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but here we have the sunflower and these tiny little trumpet-like, 5-sided petals inside, and you get this extraordinary mechanism which we've all seen and we don't really appreciate about how light forces are incorporated into the seed. The multi-layer laminate of seed membranes acts like a defibrillator according to the size effect, otherwise understood by energy researchers as a principle whereby energy moves to the smallest size while simultaneously creating higher and higher frequencies of matter. Quantum physicists and botanists understand this, but it's something to be thinking about, that what we have in the seed is the highest frequency of matter. The seed is the homeopathically prepared, potentized remedy which solves the problem of how life can reproduce itself. Okay, now we're back to, this is my daughter who is, has survived being raised by a medical doctor and is going to osteopathic school. I'm very proud of her. And we met and I took her to this shrine of Hanuman. And I'm just pointing out to you these seed images above in this beautiful arc above Hanuman. So what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture is seedless grapes. Why do we throw away the seed? It's bitter and it's indigestible. Well, that's not really rocket science to figure out how to get around that problem, right? You add natural sweeteners. In our case, we like ribose, a 5-carbon sugar that lowers blood sugar, and xylitol, a 5-carbon sugar that lowers blood sugar. The ribose gives energy, stamina, and mood elevation. Athletes use it. And the xylitol kills yeast and bacteria. Dentists use that. And then we grind the entire seed so that the husk is pulverized into a flour and bioavailable, along with all of its constituent parts. So which looks better to you? We know that the watermelon contains citrulline, but most of the citrulline is found in the rind. I'm not there yet. I can eat watermelon seeds, but you're not going to catch me eating the rind. However, I know now the rind is where most nutrients are. So I have a Vitamix. I love my Vitamix. And I'm going to start putting rind in and also enough raw honey so that I can tolerate the bitterness. But if you want the nutrition from food, you have to eat the seed. Or in the case of, in fact, here we say the watermelon seeds are the best nourishing snacks. You know, 10% more protein, unsaturated fatty acids, and so forth. You have to toast them, perhaps. And we know that the pineapple, with its bromelain, the pineapple core and the peel, who eats the peel? That's where the nutrients are. They have the 40% more bromelain per weight. And if we look at the orange, a lot of us know that there are a lot of bioflavonoids in the scuzzy aspects, but I didn't know until recently that the peel of the orange has twice as much vitamin C as the fruit. Now, this person wasn't talking about the seeds of the orange. I guarantee the seeds of the orange are the most nutrient-dense part of the fruit. Now, So now the problem is a lot of us, we can't eat the rind because it's been pesticided and so forth. But if you can get organic, that's where the nutrients are. So all this looks healthy. This is the right type of bread where there's no flour, all seeds and nuts. Pumpkin seeds, don't let your kid throw away the pumpkin seeds on October 31st. And I'm going to tell you that the best smoothies are made from not just adding avocado, but actually putting the pit in with the Vitamix. Okay? And if you haven't seen a pit, pay attention. There's a tiny thin membrane on the outside. The rest of it's all meat. It's highly edible. It's bitter, so you have to add a sweetener. We know about drinking seeds, of course, coffee and pomegranate. And so here's the challenge. How to deliver more light energy into matter. And the solution is not legible, unfortunately. I apologize. That's an oversight on my part, or maybe I'm just making it secret. But the concept is, I'm going to talk about something called fulvic acid. How many are familiar with fulvic acid? I read about it years ago as that something which a plant root has at its disposal to make the minerals in the soil bioavailable. But what we're talking about in the back of the room, my colleague Jeff Griswold, who's really a fantastic plant scientist, has developed some products I want you to all become aware of. And he's been able to, from my perspective, bring more light energy into and resident upon carbon atoms than anyone else that I know of. Now, here's a tree that he was treating. It's basically a dead tree. If you see Jeff after my talk, he can give you perhaps a better picture of this. But death in this tree, and then after putting his light-filled carbon, we call it living carbon technology, on this tree, it blooms again. He'll tell you the story. The landscapers were astonished. 30 days later, here are the blossoms. Certifiably dead, now blossoming. Here's something called slime flux disease, something that arborists know about, considered incurable. After putting, this was actually on a golf course, ornamental crabapple trees, and the expert prognosis was there's no cure, we're going to have to pull these trees and burn them. And what Jeff did is he said, I tell you what, let me use it as a trial case. If it doesn't work what I'm doing, I will buy the tree and I'll remove it at my expense. I think the manager of the golf course said, that's a good plan because I know it's dead and I'd rather not have the expense of removing it. So he let Jeff treat it, and the result was a cure. And I like what Jeff said. I said, what did the experts say? And he said, they hung their jaws on the top of their feet. So here's an interesting ratio, 1 to 2 to 1. And that's the ratio of a healthy carbohydrate. What that means is sugarcane, for example, is 16 to 32 to 16. That's sugarcane, a natural carbohydrate. If you look at your maple syrup, if you look at your apple juices and so forth, it's 1 to 2 to 1. But once you process that sugarcane, it becomes 12 to 22 to 11. Again, nature doesn't like near misses. I don't think that Michael this morning, Professor Platt talked about the difference between progesterone and progestin, but progestin is a near miss of the natural progesterone, and it's toxic. And it's what the pharmaceutical companies are trying to get you and your wives to take. But Mother Nature doesn't like near misses. And when you're feeding somebody food which has the ratio of anything other than 1 to 2 to 1, you're not feeding them living food. Processed carbohydrates like sucrose, corn syrup and so forth, which are not 1 to 2 to 1, they're not life-sustaining. And where do you get 1 to 2 to 1 ideally? It's in the seeds. Living Carbon Technologies invites you to ponder these questions. Why is fecal matter not life-sustaining? I mean, if you look at the biochemistry of fecal matter, it should be life-sustaining. Something isn't present anymore that was there. I would suggest it's light. Nutritionists might call it something else. What's the difference between the carbon in a living tree and charcoal, or the carbon in a burned tree? I would suggest the light has left. We saw that when we put a match to it. The light takes off. Okay? Light gives us life. How do you nourish How does food nourish you? How does it give energy? We hear about what I call the sun eaters, and there's air eaters. There's people who can be nourished with light, bypassing that messy process of consumption and digestion. And then the question is, we talk about various essential amino acids and so forth. Maybe carbon itself is an essential nutrient. There's more to understand when you talk with Jeff in the back of the room. Now, how much energy is packed in one seed? How is the light energy stored? The double bond is where the imponderables are incarnate. And so what Jeff taught me is that when wise tree farmers have to transplant a tree, maybe the person wants to have not a sapling but a big tree in their yard, right? So someone orders maybe a big palm tree. The secret is to throw into the roots a whole can of alfalfa seeds. So before you put the tree, the big tree now, a sapling may not need this, but a big tree in the hole, you throw in a bunch of these alfalfa seeds, and they actually give light/life forces because the seed is stored light energy. And so those big trees transplant well, and they can establish their root system because they're using the light life forces of the alfalfa seeds. Now, fulvic acid, a water-soluble organic substance of low molecular weight derived from mineral-rich humus, often found in surface water. It's a powerful electron donor. Now, fulvic acid is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but it's a quite interesting substance. And it does all these things. It's an antioxidant and a free radical scavenger. It transports nutrients in and waste out of cells. It enhances absorption. So if you're taking a multivitamin and you take fulvic acid with it, you'll get more bang for your buck. It's a potentiator of bioavailability. It restores electrochemical balance to the cells, but I really want you to focus on the fact that it rescues the citric acid cycle from anaerobic glycolysis. It restores respiration on the citric acid cycle. It delivers oxygen. Humic acid is often the source of fulvic acid. It's an excellent chelator. It's a powerful detoxifier, and it gives you sustained energy. We're talking about bioactive or living carbon. It's almost an oxymoron. How can you have living carbon? But I told you about the tree's carbon versus charcoal and so forth. So if you can enhance the life-sustaining capacity of the carbon, you have something where you have an active carbon, and that the oxygen involved becomes stabilized. So unlike hydrogen peroxide, which effervesces immediately, this product will deliver stabilized oxygen molecules. And I know of nothing else on earth that can do that. So it's worth studying this. And they carry such an enormous amount of energy that they enhance virtually anything they are bonded to. So I want you to think about the fact that something as mundane as carbon, we've all heard that carbon is essential for life, but now we have a sense of why. I think it goes back to the fact that we have that six-sided, that carbon needs to be in a six-carbon molecule to be functional. The six-sided antenna, that is our antenna for life. And we have some products that I want to introduce you to, which enhance the oxygen transport, enhance the stabilized oxygen, reverse Krebs cycle from lactic acid and so forth. There's a product called Cell Detox Assist. This enhances the metabolism of proteins and helps with DNA and RNA synthesis, increases mitochondrial production of energy. It all has to do with the fact that these products are created by a potentized carbon molecule, which is what homeopaths can appreciate. We have something called the molecule, and basically what this does is, since glyphosates, which is one of the terrible things about modern agriculture, the glyphosates which are part of the GMO process, they basically, when they're sprayed on plants, they irreversibly bind nutrients, and it's a heavy chelator, irreversible, of minerals, and so the weeds die of malnutrition, but the GMO-ready alfalfa can resist the glyphosates, and that's how the GMO plants work, in a nutshell. Also, it's interesting that GMO makes formaldehyde. You can actually test the plants for formaldehyde and see whether they're GMO or not. So the solution, the molecule, selectively tears apart the glyphosates. This is a huge thing for people who are concerned about GMO nutrition. It's a proprietary mode of action, but Jeff can give you some insight into that. Totally safe binding and releasing. No tissue deposition on the way out as it's moving stuff out. And it liberates the minerals which had been retained and not bioavailable, and it enhances the mitochondrial power plant function. So that's the molecule. Deep cleanse we'll talk a little about. So I just want to remind you, carbon is to life as an iron trellis is to the rose plant. If you want roses growing up on the outside of your house, you might have an iron trellis there. And the rose might be the goal, like life. But if you understand what's going on at Living Carbon Technologies, it's like you can have almost an infinite amount of iron trellises occupying the same space off of the side of your house, and you get an infinite amount of roses. That's the carbon technology which is now available. So let's talk about the perfect three-course meal. You need to appreciate, you need to pause before the meal and have a sense of appreciation, something along the lines of a parasympathetic relaxation, so you can have digestion. You need to nourish, you need to eat smart and eat slow and eat living foods, and you need to process. You need to digest, absorb, and eliminate. I have so many patients who will say that they're not constipated because they go to the bathroom once a week. You know, just because they're regular doesn't mean it's healthy. So Dr. Detox, a new product in back, Gary Gordon says it fulfills the promise of zeolite, and here's why. Zeolite is a wonderful product. It basically binds all sorts of heavy metals and toxins, but it only is active between the mouth and the anus, just like activated charcoal or bentonite clay. And the zeolite, not being significantly absorbed, is not bioavailable in other tissues. It's beneficial but limited in scope. And there's a patented hydrolyzed clinoptilolite, that's the source of the zeolite, which is 10 times smaller than what is required to penetrate cell membranes. This is a new invention of about probably a year and a half ago. A very smart Greek physician was able to hydrolyze the zeolite, make it water-soluble, and break it down into fragments which are 10 times smaller than what is required to pass the cell membrane. That means that Dr. Detox, unlike all other zeolite, being water-soluble, can chelate all human tissues, including passing through the blood-brain barrier. So that's another really scientific breakthrough. There's data available upon request, but the difference you have to think about is, unlike all other zeolite on the market, which is a suspension, Dr. Detox is a true solution. A solution like salt water. You can have salt water and the salt never precipitates out into salt on the bottom. Or muddy water. That would be a suspension where you give it 10 minutes and it starts to come out of solution, so to speak, because it never was in solution. It was just in suspension. So now we have a zeolite which, like salt water, is a true solution. Bioavailable, goes through all tissues in the body. Everyone who uses zeolite is concerned about free aluminum. This is an sodium aluminum silicate, and all the tests are showing there's absolutely 0 parts per billion of aluminum in this product. So it's an extraordinary product. And that helps with the detoxification. We all know from homeopathic studies that there are 5 emunctories or drainage routes. There's urination, defecation, respiration, and perspiration. And for women, there's menstruation. Those are the drainage routes you need to have. But you also need cellular detoxification. This is more organic or organ drainage routes. So you have the homeopathic drainage remedies, you have energetic medicine, and now you have a new agent to help drainage, which is this hydrolyzed, water-soluble, tiny zeolite fraction. Now, Lao Tzu said, to see things in the seed, that is genius. That means, with absolutely no need to certify you all, after this lecture, you will all be geniuses, according to Lao Tzu. So congratulations. It's like when I give lectures to lay people, I say, how many doctors in the room? We get 1 or 2 hands. I say, no, no, no. A doctor is a teacher, docere, to lead or to teach. And you all are in the room because you're learning and teaching, so you're all doctors. You may not be medical doctors, But, you know, juris doctors or doctors of law, doctors of philosophy, doctors of economics. So I always encourage my lay practitioners to refer to themselves as doctors of health, because there is no certification for that, but they understand nutrition. Now, every presentation should have some clinical case studies. So the first patient today is a 72-year-old man who says his chief complaint is that my wife says that my hair is dirty. That's a big deal, right? We're all vain. That's not, you shouldn't dismiss that lightly. So here's what happened. This gentleman started to have, after eating the seeds, his hair is starting to come in blonde again. And his wife says, your hair looks dirty. He says, my hair is blonde again. She says, it looks dirty. He says, I don't care. I feel better than I've felt in years. So here again is what seed nutrition will do. We have many instances of people whose hair is coming into their original color again. I think it's because, in part, of the DNA, what I call the DNA spare parts. When you crush up a whole seed, remember the seed is nothing but an envelope full of DNA and RNA, and the husk is nothing but guardian angels trying to protect it from being oxidized and made rancid. So now we have genetic spare parts, which are available, bioavailable, because you're eating the whole seed. So this guy, we didn't actually help him. We made the problem worse because he got more and more blonde hair. Now, can we cure aging? Well, the literature suggests that controlling inflammation is the key to a healthy old age. Now, here's, this is a doctor in University of Vermont. Aging is not the simple result of the passage of time. According to a provocative new view, it's actually something our own bodies create. We age ourselves. It's a side effect of the essential inflammatory system. Remember, inflammation is good in short dosages. It's not good if it's prolonged and low grade. And this inflammatory system protects us against infectious disease, and the side effect is aging. Aging is a side effect of inflammation. So how can we reverse aging? Well, now the term is inflammaging. There's growing evidence that the immune system is implicated in virtually all of these age-related diseases, with the inflammatory response being the triggering mechanism. Inflammaging has been coined to describe the underlying inflammatory changes. Well, I'd suggest the gentleman with the blonde hair coming in is doing a pretty good job of anti-aging based upon eating seeds, because he's actually reversing that process. So when we think about sensible, I like the term sensible. We've coined it. It means safe, effective, and cost-effective. Sensible anti-aging involves eating the seed. Mother Nature does put all her eggs in one basket. She calls that the seed. The purpose of digestion, of course, is to nourish ourselves, but essentially it's to be buffed up and have your DNA and RNA available, to repair your DNA and RNA. I think if you looked at the DNA and the RNA, you would see basically light antennae. But having said that, we still get the DNA and the RNA spare parts when you eat the seed. Where is the genetic material concentrated in plants? In the seed. So here's my father again, 62 years old, all white hair, no complaints, no illnesses, no medications. And then what happens is this. At 91, 92, his hair is coming in black. He still walks every day, still active. And here's some more pictures. These are really quite extraordinary. They're coming in black. So I checked out more of that. So this to me, after the talk, if anyone else knows anything that turns hair back to original color, I'd like to know that, because I'm thinking this is the only thing I've seen, eating seeds. Now, this is my mother. And so, Mom, how are you doing? And I saw there's a little bit of black hair coming in the front, but we all know that the hair grows fastest in the back. That's where we bald last, because that's where the most circulation is. There's some energetic acupuncture meridian reasons as well, but that's where the best growth milieu is for hair in the back. So I said, turn around. And sure enough, white hair on top, black hair at her occiput after eating the seeds. So we know about inflammation being the silent killer, whether it's Alzheimer's, diabetes, arthritis. They're caused by various things, but they're driven by inflammation. So if you want to be effective at not having people suffer, you need to address inflammation. Here's a very provocative reminder. Inflammation is not just painful joints, as I was taught many years ago. You know, this person's inflamed because he's in pain. It's the source of underlying all degenerative illnesses. Cardiovascular inflammation is much more serious a risk factor than blockage of any arteries, right? C-reactive protein. Cancer metastasis is an inflammatory process. Anyone with cancer, the primary tumor rarely kills people. It's the metastatic process, and that you can shut down with anti-inflammatories. I'll go into that in some detail. Schizophrenia and all psychiatric illnesses are driven by inflammation. Okay, here's a leukotriene receptor study. They found that if they could block the leukotriene receptors using an asthma drug of all things, where is it? Singulair. The asthma drug Singulair has rejuvenated rat brains, making old rats perform as well as young rats in tests of memory and cognition. It also encouraged the birth of new brain cells. Singulair, an asthma drug. Well, what do we know about asthma drugs? They're mostly anti-inflammatories, right? Sure enough, what they find is that it's the low-grade inflammation of the brain which is implicated in the brain-related disorders. And to tackle both problems, brain degeneration and the inflammation, Dr. Eigner targeted a set of receptors in the brain that, when activated, trigger inflammation. If you shut down inflammation, you give your Alzheimer's patients a fighting chance. You can prevent Alzheimer's if you shut down inflammation. Based on our results, the drug, the Singulair, and the inhibition of the 5 LOX pathway might be potent candidates for future therapies employing neurogenesis. Isn't that a wonderful word as we all get older? Can you pass the neurogenesis, please? Right? And promote structural and functional improvement in neurodegeneration, neuropsychiatric disease, and aging. Now, I guarantee they're going to come out with a fancy, very, very expensive drug, which will be an anti-inflammatory, based on the studies, but why not just eat the seeds? Inflammation seems to underlie not just senescence, but all chronic illnesses, even cancer. So here's May 2015, cover, and the whole article was devoted to the fact that inflammation drives psychiatric illness. If you don't know that, please pay attention to that, because there's an epidemic of bad prescriptions for psychiatric illnesses in this country. All psychiatric neurocognitive illnesses, I'm talking about autism, all the way to paranoia, PTSD, if you shut down the inflammation, there's much less of a problem. In fact, in terms of the autism processes, I like people to understand that the metaphor which patients understand is that if I'm driving in a car with Michael Gerber and it's raining out because we're in Seattle and it's nighttime, and I'm not using the windshield wipers, it's going to be hard for me to stay on the road. You got to use the windshield wipers if it's raining. Well, that's exactly what an autistic kid experiences, is he's driving with no windshield wipers in a rainstorm because of the inflammatory neurocytokine storm that he or she is experiencing. You give that autistic patient anti-inflammatories, it's like the windshield wipers turned on. Okay? It's not that complex an issue. Once you know that inflammation drives all chronic degenerative illnesses, including all psychiatric illnesses, you're going to want to give anti-inflammatory agents. Schizophrenia, the dreaded schizophrenia. Here's Psychiatric Times, January 2014. The potential for rational adjunctive anti-inflammatory therapy in schizophrenia, quenching the fire. So the psychiatrists are hearing about this, but what's the problem with anti-inflammation? Most of the drugs on the market will destroy your kidney and your liver. In fact, one of the conclusions of this article was we're not ready to prescribe anti-inflammatories because the risks outweigh the benefits. We don't want to be destroying people's kidneys and livers. So taking an anti-inflammatory agent is like using the windshield wipers when driving in a rainstorm. And avoid these drugs which are toxic and eat the seeds. Here's depression. The title of the article is, So Depression is an Anti-Inflammatory Disease, but where does the inflammation come from? Notice there's no longer a discussion about whether or not depression is an inflammatory disease. That's understood. It is a disease of inflammatory processes. That's what depression is. So how to address it? We know that depression is associated with chronic low-grade inflammatory response. And not only depression, also bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, autism, and post-traumatic stress disorder. This is Dr. Burke, and there's the reference. So inflammation All degenerative illnesses from A to Z, asthma, back pain, cancer, diabetes, go down the alphabet all the way to zits. Acne, that's inflammation. The revolution in cancer care is what I've really focused for the last 15 years on. And I'm just going to tell you quickly about cancer because there's a big epidemic of cancer. I like people to understand that one of the things to avoid, especially as regards leukemia, is electrical pollution. I'm constantly getting people referred to me for leukemia, and I ask them, where do you keep your computer? Oh, it's right by my feet, under the desk. So whether it's power lines or whatever else, it's a whole other lecture, but pay attention to electromagnetic pollution. And thanks to Michael Berger, a few years ago, I talked about the Cordelia effect here. Cancer is a messenger. Don't kill the messenger, correct the problem. The Cordelia effect, basically take down the cancer welcome sign, enhance the immune system, reduce or kill cancer tumor cells, and re-educate the cancer stem cells. Please pay attention to the cancer stem cells. That's the real target. If you haven't heard about Max Witja, you're missing the premier cancer researcher in America today. University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Treatment Center. He's recently appointed to the National Cancer Advisory Board. And he says chemotherapy and radiation make the cancer worse. Whatever happened to first do no harm. He also says the problem is when we treat cancer cells with chemotherapy, the cancer stem cells are being stimulated. They become more numerous and more virulent when you use chemoradiation. When we take the mesenchymal stem cells and mix them with tumor cells, the tumor cells grow more quickly. So cancer stem cells are the target. Chemo and radiation does not affect the cancer stem cells, except for it makes them more numerous and more virulent. Don't let your oncologist target your cancer tumor cells. That's like a straw man. What is a tumor? It's really a benign or malignant proliferation of cells, less than 1% of which are dangerous, because less than 1% of a tumor are the cancer stem cells. And only the cancer stem cells can metastasize. There's a couple of references here. Considerable evidence suggests that tumors contain only a minority of cells which are capable of regrowing the tumor, the cancer stem cells. Please focus on the cancer stem cells. Now you know you're anticipating. How do you remedy the cancer stem cell? Anti-inflammatories. We'll keep going here. Only the cancer stem cells metastasize because metastasis is an inflammatory process. This is way back in 2009. Cancer stem cells resist chemotherapy. Radiation therapy, they resist as well. Chemotherapy increases the cancer stem cell proliferation. Chemotherapy increases cancer stem cell number and virulence. The Cordelia effect we talked about. And just published last month in terms of prostate cancer, they basically said that prostate cancer is driven by genetic instability and intraclonal cancer diversification, all of which is driven by the cancer stem cell. So again, you want to ask your oncologist, what are you doing to address my cancer stem cells? The answer is nothing, except I'm going to make them more numerous and more virulent. That's the standard of care in oncology today. So there's a revolution underfoot. And if you start searching cancer stem cells, you'll see, like in Nature of 2014, this is really a landmark study. They basically say in this study, it's talking about blocking PGE2, that's an anti-inflammation process, repopulation of the tumor, abrogates the chemoresistance. What they're saying is if you take an anti-inflammatory, you'll prevent the tumor from resisting treatment. Previous studies have demonstrated that cancer stem cells are selectively enriched after chemotherapy through enhanced survival. Again, what happened to first do no harm? Chemotherapy will make the cancer cells enriched, the cancer stem cells. Further analyses demonstrate the recruitment of quiescent stem cells, making them divide in response to chemotherapy-induced damages, similar to the mobilization of normal stem cells during wound repair. If you didn't know this, this is how fearfully and wonderfully we're made. If I break your leg, if I break your femur, or if you get a gastric ulcer, there's an SOS message which the injured tissue secretes, which recruits quiescent, benign, uncommitted stem cells. I talk about the stem cells as kind of the undergraduates in the body. They haven't declared a major yet. They could become heart, they could become kidney, they could become skin, they could become anything. Those are your cancer stem cells, what Dr. Beard in 2011 called the germ cells. They're there to respond to any injured tissue in your body that says, I'm injured tissue. Would you please, any of you stem cells locally, could you recruit, come to me, chemotaxis, and make more of me? Here comes the stem cells. They say, by the way, what are you? I'm a broken femur. And they say, well, we're stem cells. We can become femur tissue. And they make more femur. Or they can make more gastric mucosa or whatever. But when you target a tumor very selectively with chemotherapy and radiation, that tumor is also injured tissue, and it's you. It's kind of doing some crazy stuff, but it's your tissue. And that tumor secretes the same SOS message. It's interleukin 8. And that message says to the stem cells, the good stem cells in the area, would you please come and become more of me? And they say, sure, that's what we're here for. By the way, what are you? Well, I'm an adenocarcinoma of the breast. Ah, we can make more of that. Do you see how that happens? That's how chemotherapy and radiation, by injuring your tissue, stimulates your tissue to emit an SOS message, which recruits good stem cells to the dark side. They become cancer stem cells. Okay? This was published in Nature in 2014. And they said, while chemotherapy effectively induces killing or apoptosis, it paradoxically, one could say lethally, promotes neighboring stem cell repopulation. They're admitting in Nature, December 2014, that chemo and radiation makes your cancer worse. This repopulation can be abrogated by the PGE2 neutralizing antibody and the Celebrex drug, Celebrex, right? Which is a drug-mediated blockade of PGE signaling. This paragraph says anti-inflammatories shut down this repopulation of cancer stem cells. Why would you take Celebrex, which, like Vioxx, in my opinion, should be off the market, when you can eat the seeds, when you can eat natural anti-inflammatories? And they conclude, in vivo administration of the cyclooxygenase 2 inhibitor, Celebrex, celecoxib, effectively abolishes the PGE2 and COX2-mediated wound response gene signature, right? It blocks the SOS. So you can't recruit benign stem cells to become cancer stem cells. And the answer, they say, is Celebrex. Again, I would suggest that there's safer and more effective agents than Celebrex to block cancer. So the take-home message from this Nature article, which everyone should get a hold of, is that chemotherapy makes cancer stem cells worse and makes cancer return. To treat the cancer stem cells, you need to use an anti-inflammatory. They're suggesting Celebrex. I think that drug should be off the market. Bonus, anti-inflammatory agents also inhibit metastatic process. That's a well-known fact. Authors recommend Celebrex. That has dangerous side effects, renal, hepato, and autotoxicity. Anti-inflammatory diet is powerful medicine. Eating whole crushed seeds is the most sensible option. So the future of cancer therapy is anti-inflammatory agents. That's another take-home message. Please, we all know people dying of cancer, being tortured in the process of dying of cancer. Please study this issue of anti-inflammation and cancer. Now, the anti-inflammatory foods are all the things we know. These are basically living foods, and what's unique about them, they're filled with light. Okay? I don't know cows which get their light directly. Cows get their light from eating greens. So eating the greens is the most light-filled way to go. Now, anti-inflammatory agents. Here's what Max Witch is coming up with. He's got a drug. Remember, Max Witch is on the National Cancer Advisory Board. He's who I consider the premier researcher in cancer stem cells. And he's developing a drug which is called Repoxetine. And it's a CXCR1 receptor blocker. Anybody else know another name for that? Anti-inflammatory. Oxygen, OxyAssist. Hypoxemia stimulates cancer stem cells. Oxygen is your remedy, exercise, so forth. Soul, Core, and Form are basically products which are available from myrainlife.com/passionsheart. These are seed-based foods, which I think are wonderful for reasons I'll go into. But the answer is, if you're concerned about cancer, eat the whole organic non-GMO seeds, not the extracted seed oils, the whole seeds. Now, here's an article published in 2010 in a journal, I think it was the Breast Cancer Research. Interfering with inflammation, is this a new strategy to block breast cancer, self-renewal, and progression? The answer is yes. That's 2010. That's almost 6 years ago. So what I'm telling you isn't really new. It's just that, unfortunately, there's a huge voltage drop between what the scientists know and what's made available to the patients. So that's what we're all in this room about. We're offering tomorrow's medicine today. We're on the cutting edge, and we're giving our patients the best medicine. Now, the 4 questions for the oncologist. Question number 1, why are you not recommending any safe anti-inflammatory agents? Your patients should be asking their oncologist that. Number 2, why do you offer us chemotherapy patients candy and cake and cookies after chemotherapy, telling us that any calorie is a good calorie? I hate that. Number 3, what will you recommend to enhance my health while you're killing the tumor cells? And then how is your recommended treatment going to affect my cancer stem cells? At that point, if they're up on the literature and they know that what they're recommending will make the cancer stem cells, the real target, more numerous and more virulent, they're going to be ashamed. Or if they're not up in the literature, they won't know what you're talking about. But the standard of care today in oncology is to make your cancer worse, because it addresses the tumor cells and not the stem cells. And it makes the cancer stem cells, the real lethal target, more numerous and more virulent. Now, in your notes, I've given lectures on this, and there's a wealth of information. I'm not going to read through it, but it's there for you to look at. And then this says, new strategy, eat the right seeds, erase the cancer. Now, I would like to be on record as saying that any plant that's alive today on Earth probably has anti-cancer properties. You know, whether it's the Easter lily, which you may know, like all trumpet plants, has a glycocyanide product, because if a bug gets in there in the Easter lily or the trumpet plants and dies, the plant has to be able to dispose of that. So there's great remedies in the Easter lily. There's great remedies in all sorts of plants, except for maybe lawn grass. All these plants, I think, will find cancer remedies. It's just that nobody's spending the money to look and see whether crab apples have anti-cancer remedies, for example. But be warned that they're all around us. You wouldn't get to be a plant on Earth today without cancer remedies. So we know about the Laetrile. We know about the FDA has made the purchase of Laetrile supplements almost impossible to obtain. The research of amygdalina is just fabulous. This is a seed-based anti-cancer product. And then in The Secret of the Pharaohs, From Here to Eternity, we talked about black cumin seeds, a product I knew nothing about, the plant, the black cumin seeds. It was found in the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun, and I have a friend who says the black cumin seed is so valuable, it's the one thing no self-respecting pharaoh would be caught dead without. So if you were a pharaoh and you were going to go into the afterlife, you had a lot of black cumin seeds with you. Now, the literature is huge, and I knew nothing about this, but thymoquinone, which is an extract, stimulates cancer suppressor cell P53, right? Cancer tumor suppressor gene P53. That's kind of the holy grail for oncology, is if you can stimulate the cancer suppressor gene P53, black cumin seed does that. Thymoquinone, black cumin seed, a lot of literature on it. It also not only stimulates P53, but P10s, P73, STAT3, PAR1, a lot of very specific anti-cancer mechanisms, but it also offers the anti-inflammation to shut down that SOS message, which the tumor, once being attacked, will emit to recruit normal stem cells. So the question is, can you have your cake and eat it too? And the answer is yes. I'd like that to be a seed flour cake, but the answer is yes. And here's what happens with the black cumin seed. And I'm mentioning this because the black cumin seed is the #1 ingredient in 2 of the products in the back of the room. But not just the extracted seed oil, the whole seed. And here's a study which shows that thymoquinone, a potential cure for inflammatory disorders and cancer, the combination of the black cumin seed and conventional chemotherapeutic drugs gives you greater killing effect of the chemo drug while reducing the side effects. You can have your cake and eat it too. So maybe the oncologist says, grump, 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 I don't want you to take anything except for my chemo drugs. Well, you can say, well, oncologist, with all due respect, theoretically, if I took something which actually made your chemo more effective while at the same time giving me less side effects, would you object to that? Here's the reference. What about radiation therapy? This is another one. The combination of thymoquinone with anti-cancer drugs has led to improvements in their therapeutic index and prevents non-tumor tissues, that's the rest of you, from sustaining damage. Another reference. And here's the radiation piece. Nigella sativa, the black cumin seed, and glutathione may be beneficial in protecting you against radiation. So eat the whole seed. Don't throw away the best part. Now here's what's very beautiful. This is an immature apple, and the seeds are white. As the apple skin becomes red on the outside, the seed is being laminated on the inside. It's the most energy-intensive process that the plant goes through. And this didn't ever make sense to me. I knew that good farmers of fruit trees would knock off a bunch of the fruit when it's immature because they want to not have the tree overburdened. And I always thought that the risk is if you were greedy and didn't knock off any of your immature apples, that you just get smaller apples. The answer is no, you get worse apples because the tree is trying to laminate the seeds of all the apples, and that's the most energy-intensive thing that the plant does. So give the plant a break, knock off a bunch of the immature apples so that it can do its job of ripening and laminating the seeds. Here's a mature apple. You can see the brown seed, and the inside is white still, and the lamination of the nutrient-dense stem cell and immune function stimulating polymannose into layers of protective glycoproteins which are rich in bioflavonoids and 1,2 and 1,3 beta-glucan. That's what you get in the husk. So not only eat the seed, eat the husk. Now, we all know about petroleum, perhaps, and the lamination in the industry. You can take gas, and just by adding CH3, you can make it into an asphalt. That's what's happening on the plant membrane level. You're laminating and densifying a fluid process into a husk. It's the most energy-intensive and physiologically stressful process of a plant in order to protect the treasure, which is the seed, which none of us eat enough of. You know, the treasure we throw away. Here's another look at the seed, this husk on the outside. It's full of this laminated process, rich in 1,3 beta-glucan, sterols, and all sorts of other things. Now, I mentioned earlier the multi-layer laminate of the membrane, because of the smaller and smaller pores, basically is a vortex. And when you think about it esoterically, it acts like a defibrillator because it charges the seed so much that the seed is able to, if you add a little water, spark life. When we go back to what Boricki said in terms of what the seed is, it's not really dead, it's not really alive, but it's been kind of defibrillated and potentized so that if you just add a little water, which is equivalent to flicking the switch of the defibrillator, now you have life. You have light becoming life, the spark of life. Quantum physicists know that. Now, I like to tell my patients that I stand firmly on the shifting sands of science. So it's entirely likely next year I'll show up and tell you something entirely different and say, remember last year that I was way off base. And one of the things I was way off base about is fish oil. And I was one of the doctors who gave patients fish oil all the time. I thought it was fabulous. And then I read Brian Peskin's work, and if you still take or give people fish oil, please do yourself the favor of taking at least 15 minutes or half an hour and reviewing what Brian Peskin says. The problem with Brian Peskin speaking to medical doctors is he's an electrical engineer. He's got no street cred in terms of medicine. But guess what? Linus Pauling didn't have a medical degree. So what I tell people now is to stop taking fish oil and stop drinking the extracted seed oils. Now here's a graphic in the book, The PEO Solution, Brian Peskin and Robert Rowan, our good friend. And it points out that it takes 17 pounds of fish to make 1 capsule of pharmaceutical grade fish oil. Now you know that the fish has no oil gland, but Where do they get the oil? I'm going to leave that to your imagination. But it takes 17 pounds of fish to make one capsule. And Andy Weil is on record as saying, I'm still not comfortable recommending that people eat saturated fat, like coconut oil and so forth. But it's clear to me that sugar, flour, and oxidized seed oils create inflammatory effects, and that the body that almost certainly bear most of the responsibility for elevating heart disease. Oxidized seed oils, that's what you get if you buy liquid extracted seed oils and you open up the cap and the air hits the oil and the clock starts ticking. So Andy would say, if you buy a pint of flaxseed oil, halfway through the month, throw it out, because it's doing more harm than good. Nature prevents freezing by creating an alcohol or an elongated fatty chain acid. DHA and EPA are long-chain fatty acids acting as antifreeze for cold water fish. A biochemist and a chemist would look at EPA and DHA and say, that cannot be good for you because that will oxidize immediately at 98.6. And yet, a lot of us are still giving fish oil supplements to patients. Fish oil creates dysfunctional cell membrane because these oxidized fatty acids are now incorporated into cell membranes and they suffocate the cell membrane. So it takes about 8 months when you stop the fish oil, it takes about 8 months to clean your membranes if you're taking good omega-6 seed oils, unadulterated. Now, these are things which are common sense. If you're going to buy extracted seed oils, you know, dark bottles, keep them cold, and so forth. But the best is to buy organic, non-GMO, whole, raw, unsalted seeds and nuts, which are over 50% oil, and freeze them and grind them every day in a coffee blender so that you have fresh ground seeds. That's the best option. If you're doing extracted seed oils, you go through all this process. It's very intrusive, invasive. If you're doing the whole crushed seeds, you just buy the whole seeds, freeze them, grind them, and eat them. The take-home message is don't simply eat the seeds, eat the whole seeds. Now, here's something that looks pretty good to us, right? So here's the test. Would you eat this or would you eat this? Well, I'm still struggling because this looks pretty good. Avocado and honeydew. But this is more nutrient dense. So none of us are going to eat that unless we blend it up and in some way take away the bitterness and get the husk to be bioavailable. But here's the fun. Back to our avocado. When I make smoothies at home in my Vitamix, I take the whole organic avocado and I drop it in. Seed, husk, skin, everything. Here's what happens to an avocado pit within a minute of cutting it open. It is highly reactive to being oxidized. These are very precious fatty acids. Here's the recipe. Get some nuts, make a nut milk, add some raw honey, add the entire avocado, add some nutmeg, some vanilla, and ice. Blend it up. By the way, I like organic ice. How many of you guys use organic ice? Yeah, that would be the stuff without the chloride and the fluoride. And that becomes a great smoothie enhancer. Now, this is my daughter when she had a sunburn, so we rubbed on the seeds, the seed oils. And this is me. I used to always get sunburned and peel every year. Ever since I've been using these products in the back of the room, if I'm going to go out and play in the sun, I hope we're clear that sunscreen is not a good thing for anybody, right? But you don't want your skin to burn. Why do people get skin cancer? It's because sun hitting skin, which is full of oxidized fatty acids, becomes cancerous. If your skin is full of omega-6 fatty acids, and by the way, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in the skin is 1,000-fold more omega-6, think seed oil, than omega-3, think fish oil. That's why you can rub seed oils on your skin like this, but you wouldn't want to do this with fish oil. And here's my lovely wife, Laura, having harvested some cherries on the top of a 16-foot orchard ladder. And she reached for that one cherry too far. Think Eden, think women. And she made the decision to just step off the ladder at 16 feet rather than to be a big mess. So she ended up fracturing her calcaneus. But we didn't know she was fractured for about a week because she rubbed the sole, which is the 3 seeds, drink in the back, which goes transdermally, and she had very little pain for the first week. So transdermal is very beneficial. Now, no one will argue that this is best. Eating fresh, eating organic. Here's a little kid sucking out coconut milk from a coconut. That's the best. Here's the product sold in the back, which kids love, And it's the more sensible option because you just aren't going to have people being able to do this all the time. It's not practical to be eating this way. So the best practice is to buy bulk, organic, non-GMO, non-irradiated, raw, living seeds, chia, hemp, whatever, pumpkin, grape, raspberry, lemon seeds, all of these seeds. Freeze them because you will not be able to grind them finely enough if they're not frozen. They become a gooey mess. Freeze them in a glass bottle, and every morning grind a tablespoon of each in a coffee grinder and eat immediately. Don't grind them on Monday morning and have that be your whole week's supply. The ideal thing is to do that. Now the problem is yours truly and 99% of the people in the world won't do that. It's too much work. It's the best thing to do, but convenience regards compliance. Soul is the product which is already the whole seed already ground up, the black cumin, the black raspberry, and the Chardonnay grape seed. Core for detoxification has the milk thistle seed, much more powerful than the milk thistle. That's liver detoxification. And the cranberry seed, that's urinary tract detoxification. And it also has the black cumin seed. And it has all sorts of vegetables in it. And the form is for anabolic restoration. It's a protein powder made from seeds. So whereas I am on record as saying the best thing is to grow your food in the organic garden and eat them fresh, that's a tough thing for most people in the world to do. So here's a sensible option for your patients, is to have these products. Now, Soul gives you 8 to 10 servings of organic fruit, 3 servings of organic cold-pressed oils, and 8 to 10 servings of organic vegetables in one 2-ounce packet. That's because it's made from seeds, and seeds are far more concentrated than what people are usually eating. This is a concentrated, delicious way to eat the whole seed. Core, in the same sense, you've got the seeds of the milk thistle, the cranberry, and the black cumin, but now you have kale, chlorophyllin, aloe vera, spirulina, wheatgrass, dandelion, chlorella. You have an alkalinizing whole seed drink for detoxification. The problem is, I don't think it tastes very good. There's some samples in the back. Some people say it's good. Some people say it's tolerable. I find it hard to get patients to drink this. So we mix that with a protein powder made from whole, organic, non-GMO seeds, Sacha Inchi seed, which is a beautiful seed from the South America, pea protein, hemp. You know, finally, hemp is making its way back into our world. Chia seed, fabulous energy. It was used originally by the Native Americans, the Apache and so forth, for running and energy. Cranberry, pumpkin. Pumpkin is a treasure chest. So now we have this is the product that you can use topically, the whole seeds, which are nutrient dense for anti-inflammation. Core is for detoxification, and form is for the proteins, highest in branched chain amino acids. So Thoreau says this. He says, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I'm prepared to expect wonders. That's what we're talking about, is the whole seed. So eat the seeds, and as the last thing I'll say, it's time to get out the cigars, because I told you about that Judean date palm tree that was 2,000 years old. Well, it recently became a papa. So it's one thing to regenerate a seed and have it grow. Here's a seed that was 2,000 years old, and finally when it was brought to life, it was able not only to live, but to reproduce. And that's pretty miraculous. So thank you for your time. I have no idea whether I've gone over. I don't think I have, but I'm happy to take questions. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
What would be a good source for purchasing non-GMO seeds?
Well,
and organic seeds?
You know, this is a moving target. That's the great question, because the source I got it from yesterday, today they might be radiating it. I mean, you really have to be vigilant.
Right.
But your goal is to have organic, non-GMO, non-radiated, raw seeds. And unfortunately, even today, our organic certifications don't mean a lot. The company Rain that makes the core and the soul and the form, they've had to turn back numerous batches of seeds which were labeled organic because they test every batch and they weren't organic. So I can't really tell you, I wish I could tell you what a good source is. Maybe some of the good bulk foods are, but we've had a hard time recently even getting irradiated almonds.
Okay.
So if anybody does know a good source, please
Please.
grab the microphone and share it.
The next question is, you had a bunch on sunflower in the beginning, you know, the beautiful sunflowers, and yet I didn't see uses of sunflower seeds toward the end.
Well, at our house we have sunflower seeds, and we'll freeze those, we'll grind those, husk and all. I have to add a lot of honey if I do that, right? Because it's pretty bitter. But you can eat all these seeds. The products we feature today didn't happen to have the sunflower seed in it. I gave you that as an example graphically of this Fibonacci spiral, which the point I wanted to make is that the seed itself is the recipient of a vortex of energy and light energy. So it's the repository of the best source of light food.
Got it. Thank you.
But it's a fabulous
Thank you very
seed.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a quickie, the other day we were Googling zeolite, and it has various structural forms that have obviously been colored, but it's most gorgeous, beautiful, cage-like structures, but they're crystalline, and it's just manifold different forms, and it's really gorgeous. If you ever get a chance to Google zeolite, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and the zeolite is, if anyone doesn't know zeolite, it's like a honeycomb structure. The interesting thing is that a lot of zeolite is released when there is a volcanic explosion. And what else is released? A lot of toxic heavy metals, mercury, lead, and so forth. So in a way, when you have a volcano, it's the world is designed such that when the toxins are brought into the environment, also the zeolite is brought in. It's a wonderful agent, but as I said, I've never been impressed with it because I think it's more expensive than it should be, and something like activated charcoal is inexpensive. And since zeolite only works from the mouth to the anus, activated charcoal has been my treatment of choice. But now we have a product which is hydrolyzed clinoptilolite fragments. It's a zeolite fragment, which is small enough to go everywhere, is water soluble, and so it's like having 1 million cleaning ladies go through every tissue in the body. So now I'm a big fan of it.
One reliable company for seeds is a company that supplies organic seeds to the organic agriculture industry called Seeds of Change.
Okay, sure.
So
thank you.
Might check them out. Also, just as kind of a side extension, the cancer stem cell really evolves from an aberration in the control of the length of telomeres. And that raises the issue of, are all efforts to maintain or increase the length of telomeres a wise idea? And to your really brilliant talk about seeds and their manifold benefits, part of that telomere biochemistry involves maintaining the integrity of something called a shelterin complex, which requires both fat-soluble and water-soluble antioxidants to maintain the balancing mechanism for ensuring the appropriate length of telomeres during growth and development.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, telomeres is all the rage now, and it's very worth studying. I would suggest that the telomere, in general, the understanding is the longer the better, but you've pointed out a good issue on that. Think of the telomere as an antenna for light. That's what they really are.
Just to clarify more, the seeds that we're allowed to eat, you talk about eating the whole seeds. So it could be anywhere from eating a lemon seed to persimmon seeds. I mean, anything that you eat, we can eat the seeds too. Are there any seeds that we should be aware of that we shouldn't be eating?
Well, we know, thank you for that. In the beginning, I introduced the question of poison being a question of dosage. And there is some cyanide in some of the rose seeds, including apple and some of the related seeds. I've never heard of anybody having trouble eating those seeds, but there's a theoretical concern. So I don't know. There might be a seed out there which is toxic. I haven't run into that. If anyone does know of any toxic seeds, you know, that'd be interesting. I'm not sure if a whole Nux vomica seed, for example, might do us in. So we have to be careful. But the take-home message is really, if you find seeds which are not in any way poisonous, they are the most nutrient-dense part of the plant. And if you're throwing them away, you're throwing away not only the optimal nutrition, but you're also throwing away the potentized light forces of the plant. And if you will grant me that we are light beings that really nourish ourselves by eating light, then don't throw away the seeds.
I have 3 things I would like to ask you about. Number one is the difference in nutrient content between sprouts and seeds.
Thank you. That's a great question. And we've done some sprouting in our home. We're organic gardeners and so forth. And I love sprouts. I think that often when you're eating sprouted product, you leave behind the seed and the husk, and you just eat, for example, the wheatgrass, which is a sprouted wheat germ. Typically, you're eating just the grass. I found that the seeds, after they're sprouted, are particularly bitter and distasteful. So most people don't eat the seed husk and the seed residual. They just eat the sprouted part. Fabulous nutrition. In my opinion, nowhere near as beneficial as the whole ground-up seed.
And we have been frequenting Azure Standard, a bulk drop-off points around the world, or USA, where they do not have or sell any GMO anything, and they do some testing. I don't know how much, but they will, as far as everyone knows, as far as they know, they do not have GMO products of any kind, and they sell loads of seeds.
I just wrote down Azure Standard. Thank you. As regards GMO, again, I learned from Jeff Griswold in the back of the room that the GMO plants produce a higher amount of formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, and that there's a very cheap test which is available now and should be used by all nations to verify non-GMO foods by testing for formaldehyde. My website, which is weeksmd.com, if you type in GMO or formaldehyde, you'll see the test in the inventor. And it's one of those fabulous breakthroughs, which I'm sure will take about 70 years for the FDA to incorporate.
The little sticker that says verified non-GMO appears on many things, and it's supposed to be very reliable. It's third-party testing.
No.
So it should be free.
Good.
And the cyanide in apple seeds, really how potent or how dangerous is that?
Thank you for that. I mean, I've always instinctively eaten the whole apple. I eat organic apples, and so I'll chew up the seeds. And probably about a third of the people in the room will do that. And I think that, so the quick answer is I don't know. And I've never heard of anybody getting in trouble with eating apple seeds. Mae West said too much of a good thing is wonderful, but she was the only one that said that. So maybe you could get too much apple seeds, but I don't see that practically happening in life, that people would eat too many apple seeds. So I haven't had that as a concern. And again, I'm suggesting that there probably are some seeds out there that wise people say don't eat. So I want you to, the first side really said eat the right seeds. And so if it's like mushrooms, if you're not sure what it is, probably don't eat it. Thank you for the questions. Great.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. It's fascinating. I'm wondering what's up with the idea of the cancer stem cell? Aren't we talking about the stem cell and its ability to provide a benefit for a living cell around it based on its epigenetic effect? Is it a different cell than the stem cell that regenerates a healthy tissue?
This is such an important question, and I have studied this for about past 8 years. I've been lecturing on this. I have a great friend and teacher, Otto Wolff. When someone asked him a question he didn't know the answer to, he would say, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. And if memory serves me, I don't think I've ever lectured on that topic. So I don't know the answer to that, and I have lectured on the topic. And I think at this point that I would suspect the answer is that there are stem cells. This is what Dr. Beard taught us in 1911. And these stem cells he called them germ cells. We're loaded with them as part of our embryological development. And then they are available to be recruited to go to the site of injury. And I believe what's happening is that if they're recruited to repair a kidney or a heart, these are the stem cells which now people are delivering to people. If you have heart problems, you could go get some stem cells for your heart. Those are just programmed to become whatever the injured tissue is. The problem is when the injured tissue is your own cancer, when that tissue, which is allowed to also secrete that SOS interleukin-1 inflammatory cytokine message, it will recruit what they called quiescent or benign or uncommitted stem cells. And instead of coming to the area and becoming and recreating more tissue which is healthy, they actually recreate bad cancerous tissue, and they make the problem worse.
I understand.
That's my understanding.
They're pluripotent, and
Right.
they will support whatever level of cell development is around them if they're recruited to do that. But if there was a cancer stem cell, then every fetus and developing infant would be loaded with reasons for cancer to be developed from their stem cells. I just don't think it's a
so
word
I'm
that has meaning.
trying to answer this more clearly then. I believe that the healthy child, although we know about the hundreds of toxins in cord cell blood and so forth, but I believe the healthy child has no cancer stem cells. I think what happens is the cancer stem cells are created by a cancer being a DNA, RNA damage, a light disease in that sense, and then when the cancer is attacked by the immune system or by the chemoradiation, in defending itself, because it is now injured tissue, it will recruit normal healthy stem cells, and then they go over to the dark side, and then the body has the first cancer stem cells. But I have to tell you at the same time, if you were all a bunch of oncologists in this room, half of you would not even believe in cancer stem cells. It's still not considered it's still considered a hypothesis. I don't think it is personally, and the top researchers don't either. One of the slides I showed referenced a bunch of the top people in cancer research who are totally on board with the cancer stem cell process. But if we were a group of oncologists and we agreed that cancer stem cells existed, we would have to stop chemo and radiation right now. Except in the event that you want to shrink a tumor which is just growing up against the trachea or blocking a vital artery. I mean, the primary tumor can hurt you if it grows too big and obstructs something. But if and when the cancer stem cell hypothesis is proven and accepted, it becomes criminal to give chemo and radiation. And what's happening now is that, I just posted today at weeksmd.com, the most recent post, you'll watch a lot of cancer stem cell development companies are getting a lot of money now to go and address cancer stem cells. I'm here to tell you, I've looked at all of those companies and all of those drugs in development, and they are all anti-inflammatories.
Brad, thanks so much. Great talk. But let's not forget Laetrile, which is loaded with cyanide.
Yeah.
And it's in peach pits, peach pits, apricot pits, of course, and cherry pits, as well as lentils. I know you're an IPT doctor as well as we are, most of us in the room here. But let's not forget that when you do the genomic testing first, which is where all the emphasis now, all oncology is headed for genetic testing or molecular testing, sometimes called liquid biopsies even, that you're getting a list of drugs that have a kill ratio no higher than 80 to 85%. So you're never going to kill all of the cancer cells. But when you also get the list of the supplements, which usually number anywhere from 12 to 20, that calculus, and we have worked out a mathematical formula with top mathematicians, the calculus of all that ammunition going on the cancer, because the supplements all have individual kill ratios of 10, 15, 20, 25, never up to 80, but always probably around 40, 50. So that calculus brings it up to a high 90s, and then we postulate that our own immune systems, if they're revved up during the process, will gobble up the rest. So you can't say that the chemo has no effect. It's a combination of the right supplements, which is genetically determined, and the right drugs, all above 80%, hopefully.
Yes, I'm looking, Jim, thank you for that comment. And I think you and I both stand firmly on the shifting sands of science, and I respect you as a scientist and someone who's doing the best for the patients. What I want to stress here is that less than 1% of the tumor, 99.1 to 99.6% of the tumor are not dangerous, aside from the steric or obstructive factors. Less than 1% of the primary tumor cells cultured in vitro can give rise to colonies. And therefore, if I grant you that the best chemo drug will only kill 80% of the tumors, I would still say that we have to understand that two things happen. If you successfully kill 80% of the tumor, number one, you still haven't addressed the lethal cancer stem cells, the only cells that can metastasize. And number two, the 20% that's there cannot spread, cannot grow. It might remain a tumor. Jim, I think he's got a follow-up question, Michael. I think Jim's going to have a discussion. So I want to stress that when you look at the literature, it's people like Max Dean at the Dean Laboratory at Stanford University who says that less than 1% of primary tumor cells cultured in vitro can give rise to colonies. And for primary human and mouse tumors, this number's in the thousands or millions. You can transplant thousands or millions of tumor cells and they will not take because you need the cancer stem cell.
Brad, can I just interrupt a second? But
yeah.
Really, you're looking at circulating tumor cells. These are the bad guys that they're harvesting out and growing in vitro, culturing, and then tearing apart genetically. So those are the bad guys. Those are the 0.1% or whatever you want.
Jim, I'm going to take as much time as you want, but I believe if you read what I'm reading, you will realize the circulating tumor cells are harmless. It's the cancer stem cells.
Brad, you're going to have to then explain complete remissions and partial remissions, and you haven't done it.
We could go into that. But when you look at the current literature, and it's shocking because as an IPT doctor, Jim, and you know I'm one of the 3 doctors in America certified to teach other doctors about IPT, I never give IPT unless I'm giving powerful, safe, and effective anti-inflammatories, because when I know that I'm selectively targeting the tumors, which is a great thing for the person who's not comfortable with a big tumor, you want to shrink that tumor, that I'm harming the patient unless I'm blocking that interleukin-8 inflammatory cytokine message wherein the tumors which are being attacked are recruiting stem cells to become cancer stem cells. IPT is wonderful as long as we're targeting at the same time the cancer stem cells and not letting the injured tumor recruit good stem cells to become bad stem cells. And you and I know about the circulating tumor cell tests and stuff, and I'm intrigued at the two sides are not having an understanding here in terms of coming to the table, but you have some of the top researchers. I'm going to show you this again because this is a good, here. These are the people, and you've heard about, well, you know what? I don't have the slide I wanted, but I'm going to send it to you. But some of the top cancer research are agreeing with me that the circulating tumor cells are not relevant because they're tumor cells. They're just got into the bloodstream because of, as you know, a breach into the blood vessel. The tumor can grow into the blood vessel and it can leak in. But if you take a circulating tumor cell and you try to grow a cancer out of it, you're up against this kind of a problem where what metastasizes? Cancer stem cells, not cancer tumor cells. Certainly they can get in the bloodstream and circulate, but they're not going to be metastatic. That's the distinction I'd like to understand with you. Tumor cells are heterogeneous in their capacity to give rise to tumors upon transplantation or to form colonies in culture assays. For in vivo tumor transplantation, this is reflected in the large number of tumor cells that must usually be transplanted to form a tumor. You need thousands or millions because only when you have thousands or millions are you going to get enough cancer stem cells to actually create the problem. And again, that gets back to this. Less than 1% of a tumor, and in this case they're saying less than 0.1% of the tumor can metastasize. So I'm in the camp that says the circulating tumor cells are not dangerous, are not the target. It's the cancer stem cells. And currently, there are no tests that I know of, because it's such a tiny population. There are no tests which actually show that the cancer stem cells are circulating. That's hard to find them. But that's what, if you pay attention to what Max Witch is doing and Max Dean is doing at Stanford, that's the future of cancer. And the treatment is not chemo or radiation. It's not IPT. It's anti-inflammatories.
Just a couple of more quickies.
Just on food, like you're saying, if we eat hemp seeds, you're saying we shouldn't just chew up and eat the hemp seeds as they come? We need to freeze and grind those too?
I think that you can always make medicines, like there's some excellent hemp oil and cannabis oils. That is a medicine, but as far as nutrition is concerned, the optimum nutrition is to take those organic hemp seeds, freeze them, because if you freeze them, then when you put them in the coffee grinder, they'll pulverize and you'll get all of the constituents of the husk as well as the seed to be bioavailable. So if you just chew the hemp seed, you're not going to get as much as if you would have ground them up, because it's just plain hard to get all the nutrients from the seed. I said earlier, I think nature doesn't want us to eat the seed. It's too precious. She wants to fool us and have us eat the fruit and deposit the seed somewhere else.
So like they say, soaking the chia seed and having that gel, it's still encapsulated underneath that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And you have to be a very fine chewer to be able to break the chia seed husk.
Okay, then what about like soaking your almonds? Like that becomes a live food and you have it sprout? Is that the best way, or do we have to grind up our almonds too?
Well, certainly you get enzyme activation by soaking, and a lot of farmers will soak the seed before they plant the seed. So there's benefit there, but that's good. Another simpler thing to do is to freeze them and grind them, and you get all that benefit anyway, because when you freeze them and grind them, then the enzymes are activated in the breaking of the husk. Good question, thank you.
I hope I'm going to offer a clarifying but maybe provocative clarification. Solid tumors are necrotic, generally anaerobic environments, and the stem cells in there, as all tumor cells do, have lost what's called contact inhibition. This is one of the very seminal principles of metastatic cancer. And I think what's now beginning to become clear is that when the cancer stem cell, quote, escapes or metastasizes, it will have its pluripotential capacity to form a new metastatic site in what is an inflamed tissue area. It's the fertile field principle. And I don't know what your thinking is, but I think this ties in with the beneficial effects of the non-GMO, non-irradiated organic seed and its benefits, particularly the black cumin seed. The thymoquinone effect is dramatic, and I think going to be the one of the touchstones of the therapy of the future for malignancies.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, my wife Laura in the back of the room pointed out that there's a lot of research now where they're actually trying to turn this natural substance, thymoquinone, into a drug. And the black cumin seed, if you ever read the Quran, Muhammad says the black cumin seed cures everything but death. Right? This is something that nobody in medical school told me about. It would have been nice. I had back pain for 20 years. I did all sorts of things, including bee venom therapy. Nothing really helped it. I took this product sold for 2 days, and the morning of the third day I woke up with no back pain for the first time in 20 years. I said, what the heck is in this stuff? I thought it was probably spiked. It turns out when I did a PubMed search of black cumin seed, which you've obviously done, in thymoquinone, there's thousands of articles about this, and it's very powerful in and of itself as an anti-cancer drug remedy. And in addition, it's anti-inflammatory. So not only can you interrupt that interleukin-8 SOS message and shut down the inflammation, but you can actually remedy the cancer tumor cells as well. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks. Another
What a
big
pleasure.
hand. Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thanks a million. Beautiful job. Well done. Great presentation.